and a whole nother group that's going to watch because of all the Jake Gyllenhaal shirtless scenes.
I also think Conor McGregor too. Like,
He's a big draw. You're right.
Yeah,
He has a huge fan base, and it being his debut acting performance is a big draw as well.
I can't see what this is about. Where the fuck is everyone?
Like
that was really cool, actually. So that they filmed that at a live UFC event.
Yeah, for a real audience.
Yeah, they did the weigh-ins and all that stuff at an actual UFC event.
Introducing first, the challenger,
I just went into it like expecting a modern day B action movie, and I feel like it's sold on that like so good.
Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on this episode, we're doing a review on the new Roadhouse movie.
3, 2, 1,
action. Roadhouse. Amazon dropped a new movie recently, and we watched it with our friend and former guest on the show, Zach.
Former. Never seen again.
Never seen again.
He's still out there.
Yes.
Some say they can still hear him reviewing movies and shows.
That's right. So, what did you think of the movie Roadhouse?
So, I haven't seen the original Roadhouse in a long time. This movie's obviously based on the 1989 classic B action movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, with Peace Ways. Rest in peace. And I haven't seen that one since I was literally a kid. So I'm not like comparing it to that like I think a lot of people are in their minds. I just went into it like expecting a modern day B action movie, and I feel like it's sold on that like so good. And when I say B action movie, I don't mean like a subpar movie that is an action movie. I mean like it's, we don't go into this movie expecting like the same kind of script that we get from like Blade Runner, which is also an action movie. So like it's just a fun time, And I went in expecting that, and they delivered on every level. I mean, I have some minor complaints that we can get into about kind of like some of the over-reliance on special effects in areas that didn't work. But overall, like the movie really rides on the back of the charisma of Jake Gyllenhaal, which is unending and impressive. And as a fun villain with Conor McGregor, and I really like enjoyed sitting down with you guys watching this movie. How about yourself?
Yeah, I feel like that's exactly it. We were pitched a fun movie, and we got a fun movie. I haven't ever seen the original Roadhouse, so I think that probably helped me enjoy this movie more because I wasn't comparing it to something else. And from my understanding too, like this is a loose remake. It's more of a retelling that it's not really the same thing. They kind of took the characters and switched it and put it into their own story, it seems.
It's really kind of different. Like they took the concept of like the guy coming into town, becoming a bouncer and like defending the Roadhouse, like, but really didn't run with like too much else. Like there's the Patrick Swayze's character in the original Roadhouse. I think it's also same name, Dalton. He's not like quick to violence either, but when like provoked, he, can handle himself really well. So there's some similarities, but it just seems like they took it, made it very Floridian, made it very, very beachy and brightly colored. And they made a lot of changes to it, which I don't think were for the worse. I mean, it's a different story, and it's a heck of a good time. Like the cast is clearly having fun. There's some really good action in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The movie right now has a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb.
Yeah, the ratings are egregious. They're bad.
Yeah, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not like a Oscar movie, which I don't think any of us were going into that expecting it.
It's a 59% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 58% Metacritic, so it's kind of floating around that 60% mark, but it is the #2 most searched action movie today on Google, so people are paying attention to it.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
I think that's what Prime really wants, honestly, more so than great ratings.
Right, exactly. That's kind of how streaming floats their boat, They just kind of want the show or movie to be played in the house.
Yeah.
You know,
As soon as they anchored Jake Gyllenhaal into the project, like they were kind of set on that front. Like there is a whole group of people that are going to watch it just because of that, and a whole other group that's going to watch because of all the Jake Gyllenhaal shirtless scenes.
I also think Conor McGregor too. Like
He's a big draw. You're right.
Yeah,
He has a huge fan base, and it being his debut acting performance is a big draw as well for people to see what he can bring to the screen. And it's an action movie, so
Yeah.
you're getting like an actual fighter's take on like stunt choreography. I know he
Absolutely.
went over a lot with Jake. You can see in like behind the scenes, like, and Jake was saying how strange it is for Connor to miss a punch intentionally when his whole career is built on landing punches intentionally.
Yeah, we're gonna take this movie review in a slightly different approach than we normally do, kind of more in a lightning review, if you will. This movie was directed by Doug Liman.
You might know him from like American Made and the Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum.
Identity.
Not Identity.
He didn't do the first one. I'm pretty sure he did the first one. Let me look. I got it right here.
Paul Greengrass might have directed the later ones then.
I'm pulling it up here. Got Roadhouse, Impulse, American Made, The Wall, Edge of Tomorrow. I like that movie. Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
That's a good one too.
Bourne Identity. That looks to be the only Bourne film that he directed.
Okay, then maybe Paul Greengrass directed Supremacy and Ultimatum.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yep. Yeah.
we'll kind of dive into more of the film through our categories that we use to rate the film. And the first one for that is story. So, Andrew, out of 10 points, what did you give the story of this Roadhouse remake?
Just going off the cuff, I'm gonna say the story is like a 6.
A 6? I put a 7.
Okay.
You know, it was a fun story.
I like how they acknowledged the story they were going for within the story, talking about like the concept of a classic Western of, rough and tumble outlaw coming into town and cleaning things up. And then like acknowledging the mystery aspect that they put into later. Him and that young girl in the bookstore kind of talk about these things.
It was definitely a little cheesy, but I think it worked. It felt like it was intentional, and a lot of the jokes, even though they're cheesy, I feel like they landed, like it made me laugh. Or like even the piano scene, where it's like this piano's out of tune. Like it was funny.
I thought
it was
that
cheesy.
That one,
it was funny.
The piano specifically was too cheesy for me, but that's just my.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded a little.
I watched something and they were saying that they added that in the day of, and I don't know. It's funny, like it definitely kind of takes you out of it a little bit, but that's just kind of how this film was. And I think if you go in to that knowing that, like, you're gonna have a good time. Jake Gyllenhaal delivers on all of his lines and stuff, which kind of brings us into our next category, and that's acting. What did you think of the acting in this film?
It's not a dramatic film, so there's not a lot of opportunity for people to perform, much, really, really with a lot of depth in terms of the script other than Jake Gyllenhaal's character. I think I'm going to give it a 7.5.
That's what I gave it too.
Especially including this, since we include the stunt choreography as part of their acting. Like the stunt choreography in this movie is really great. And I don't know if you've heard this, but they filmed each of the big hits like 4 different ways. So they would.
This is so cool.
Yeah, they would film the hit like traditionally, which is like where you're stacking the punch, you're missing the person and using camera angles to make it look like they hit them. They would film it where they had wrapped the person in like a protective mat or something, and then actually landing the hit on them. And then they would film it where they were like landing the punch, but gently. And then they would film it where they were swinging the punch, but nobody was there. And they would composite the shots together to make it look like a really landing a punch. And if you look, like specifically the one that jumps to my mind is when Conor McGregor really headbutts Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Dalton. It looks like he hit him in the face.
Yeah.
And the angle is like wide to it. It's not hiding it. It's not like behind Jake's head. It's like a side profile, and it damn sure looks like he's headbutting the shit out of him.
Yeah,
so like they sold the punches with this stuff.
They're like overlaying 4 different shots and merging them all together. So like when he headbutt, they did it like pretending that he hit him. And like you said, they had a pad there for Connor to hit his head into. And then they took a pad and hit Jake, to get Jake's reaction. And then they like kind of stitched them all together, and I think they also had a plate too of no one else there for both of them. And yeah, they used all 4 shots and 5 shots, 6 shots and merged them together. And they did that a few times. And there's definitely some punches in there that like look like they just got clocked in the jaw, like there was some big hits, but at the same time, some of the shots and hits felt a little weird, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like blending things together like that, this is the first time I've ever heard of this being done.
Right.
So it's like kind of a new frontier in action. So it's bound to be like some awkward missteps in there, even in the final cut. But this could be something that they continue to run with, you know, in the action genre. This could be the next step into like really look like, I mean, action already looks really good. The John Wick knife throwing fight scene, it looks like he's throwing these knives into flesh.
Yeah.
But this could be like the next frontier into that, into additional realism for those fight scenes.
So we said earlier that Conor McGregor had a big draw for this movie. Like a lot of fans of him probably tuned in to watch this film.
I mean, they're used to paying how much for a pay-per-view fight to watch Conor McGregor?
Yeah.
Like they can afford a month of Prime Video.
Pretty sure I saw somewhere that he is one of, if not the highest first-time actors, highest paid first-time actors.
Yeah, he got paid millions for his first acting performance.
Which is pretty crazy. So how did you think he did? What did you think of his performance?
You know, much like the way that Dwayne Johnson does a good job of playing himself, I think he did a good job of playing himself.
So I think it's even more so like him actually playing himself than even The Rock, you know, because we see Conor like putting on this like persona, you know, that's
For the UFC match.
yeah, that's like so big. He almost takes like kind of that WWE like performance and brings it to the promotions of his fight. So it felt like that in the show, you know, and a lot of people are like, oh, like he's bad at acting or whatever. I feel like that's exactly why they brought him in, you know, to just be Conor. And he was. I thought his intro into the Roadhouse was pretty cool. You know, like
I said to you before, I feel like because maybe it's just because I've seen him put on that performance before. I feel like in a real life setting, I feel like I can see him performing the same way. Like you watch WWE, it's over the top. You can see them performing, and that's their intention. I think that's maybe even more apparent to me next to Jake, who I just think is like a masterclass of an actor, like incredibly like a generational talent. And watching him like in anything, he just brings such a good like presence to the role, whether it's comedy, if it's an MCU film, if it's like Love and Other Drugs and it's like a romantic comedy, if it's this movie and it's action. Like I just think that he really sold me on that character. And I go into the movies liking the character because it's Jake Gyllenhaal too.
right.
But like I think he like shined so well in this movie. Like I said, put the movie absolutely on his back. And the funniest moments, the funnest moments, like the bravado of the character, and then into like the rage in the character, breaking into the third act of the movie. Like you had an actor with the talent to do all of that, and they took advantage of it. So I just love that they gave him like that rage, that calm, boiling over rage aspect as well. That was like cheering in my seat at the pool scene.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the flashbacks, you know, and like how brutal he was in the UFC match.
Yeah, he said something to the guy.
Worst ref in the world. Though,
yeah, I know. Dude, the guy's on the ground clearly not responsive, letting him get his head caved in.
So they probably got in a few extra punches than what was necessary to explain his...
To really make it clear.
Yeah, they could have stepped in sooner, I think. But
I think that it's really cool that those flashbacks show what he talks about in the pool scene as the guy's dying. He says, like, it takes a lot to get me angry, but when I do, like...
Yeah.
You want to be somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's go into our next category, and that's cinematography. We're cruising right through this review. Cinematography encapsulates a lot of stuff that goes in the movie, at least for us in this rating format, and that's the shot selection, the camera movement, the color grade. What else? We got special effects, maybe how they sold some of the punches and stuff that we already talked about. So what did you give the cinematography? The lighting goes into this too. What did you give the cinematography for Roadhouse?
I'm gonna say like 6.5.
Okay, that dropped a little bit from the acting. I give it a 7.5.
I think that what really cost it for me is the moments where they did CGI that I really feel like didn't have to be. Like that's the CGI of.
I almost forgot about that stuff.
I namely think of the
truck
scene on the highway when those two, I think it's a guy and a girl, they try to hit him with the truck and he jumps out of the way. Like Could have done that some different kind of way with a stunt actor or something.
Even the truck like sped up weird towards him.
The
Like,
truck looked.
that could have all been
I mean,
practical. Why wasn't it?
He clearly just jumped away from nothing, and a truck was entirely added in post, is what it looked like.
It looked like the truck was like just taken a screenshot of, and then they keyframed it forward.
Yeah, which is
like
it
had an unrealistic
and it
acceleration.
was like out of focus to try and hide that. But and then when he's like the truck's hanging over the edge of the bridge, it also looks really pretty bad there. I mean, that's kind of like the worst of the CGI in the movie. But there is other scenes, stuff to do when they're fighting on the boat and then the boat crashing into the building. There's a few other scenes. The scenes out on the water, which is the introduction of like the big bad, the villain with a lot of money, the kind of bratty young guy. I thought that was great. Like that's not to say that that's special effects. I think the great thing about that scene is they just shot it on a boat.
Right.
And like having like a bumpy ride on a boat with practical blood on his face as the guy tries to shave him, it just makes this guy seem like so like entitled but crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like on the edge of my seat, like he's gonna get his throat slit by this guy trying to shave him. So I thought that was really well filmed. Everywhere you can use practical, it's always cool to see practical as a fan and an audience member.
For sure. It's more believable. Part of what gave it a 7.5 for me, one is the kind of overspill of all the colors. I really like that when a scene's like kind of taken over by different colors.
And the vibrancy Florida like is a great place to take advantage of that. Like when, especially in a beach setting, this is a little island community on a little Florida beach community. Like there's the bright blue of the water, is beautiful water out there, sandy beach, the green trees. And so like, it's great to take advantage of that vibrancy in the color grade.
Yeah. Some of the things that were impressive, like when Connor and Jake fought for the first time in the bar. Like there's so much happening, everyone's fighting in the background and stuff. Like there's clearly some long takes. There's some noticeable cuts as well on this like oneer, but at the same time, it's hard to get everyone to be right on time. Remember that stunt that the guy like slammed into the counter and his neck like
that was
folded in half. That was insane.
All three of us were like, oh
yeah, that was insane and like unnecessary. Like we didn't know who that was or anything. Like it was crazy.
Some of the shots were really ambitious like that. I mean, boat. I mean, even the complaint about the CGI in the boat scenes. There's some really ambitious boat shots.
Absolutely.
There's some drone shots in the movie that are really cool. But like there's a pretty cool looking oneer in that bar scene when everybody's rampaging.
Yeah. I feel like some of the tricks that they used for the fight were a little distracting. I kind of mentioned that earlier, but you're stitching together videos from different takes and stuff to try to make them cut and land. Some of it becomes uncanny, like that looked weird. That didn't look right, but also in that last fight, some of the camera movement just felt too much in a sense, where it was like a camera doesn't do that. So it felt fake, so that's kind of where some points maybe got taken off from me. Anything else for cinematography before we go on to sound design?
No, nothing else in particular. I mean, I like the way that they shot the flashbacks.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see shots in the ring like
that. That was really cool, actually. So that they filmed that at a live UFC event.
Yeah, for a real audience.
Yeah, they did the weigh-ins and all that stuff at an actual UFC event. And then they said that they had anywhere from 30 seconds to 7 minutes to film their piece. And that varied based on how long the fight before them took in real life. So they planned out pieces of this choreography, and they basically, I'd imagine, worked backwards, to get what they could, depending on how much time there were. So they first filmed their quick 30-second version. And then they're like, you got more time, keep going. So they filmed their 3-minute version. They're like, no, you have this full 7 minutes. So they filmed the rest of the the flashback that they wanted.
That's a really
that's like high pressure stuff right there. Yeah. Which just on the actors, but then also on the people filming, like you got to get it right. You only have 7 minutes to film one scene. That's intense.
I mean, if you've got Jake in there, 2 stunt actors, you got to get Jake out of the shot if you're going to do something with the stunt actor, or have Jake really, really well involved in the choreography beforehand.
Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, so moving on to sound design. This encapsulates all the sound effects that you hear, the soundtrack, the score, and then any like songs that they pick to bring into the film. What did you think of the sound design?
Sound design, I didn't notice it in a good or bad way, so I'm gonna probably land it at a 7. I mean, it's cool how they have the bands continuing to play while everyone fights, which is
that's fun.
psychotic, but
That's fun. Yeah,
it's interesting for this community.
They got this fence around. You know, this bar obviously has gone through a lot. They just hired a bodyguard for like what, $20K a month or something. It's a crazy amount of money. So the band's used to it at this point, I can imagine. I give it a 7.5, kind of for the same reason. Like I didn't notice it in a good way or a bad way. So that means they did their job pretty well, you know. I mean the fight, the hits sounded like they were landing, you know, when they're slamming the car door into Connor, like that sounded and felt real. The glass breaking when he punched through the glass, like I thought the music and the sound effects added to the story, but it definitely wasn't distracting or overwhelming either.
I just normally like to hear like a keyframe song or a keyframe score that I leave the movie like bumping a little bit to, or like you leave Guardians and you're like hooked on a feel, you know, it doesn't really have anything quite like that.
Yeah. Okay, ready to move on?
Yeah.
Set and character design. This is out of 5 points. This is kind of the locations that they chose, and then how they chose to fill them up, and how they chose why did they choose for the characters to wear what they're wearing and all that stuff. Like how did it all kind of tie together? I gave it that's a little low. I'm gonna go up to a 3 out of 5.
I'll agree to a 3 as well.
Yeah, I originally had a 2.5, and I think that was too low. That's a 50%. It definitely was better than that.
Well, especially considering set and character design includes like little details on the person's actual body, like when they take an injury, they're bleeding, broken bones. The Conor McGregor, they changed his tattoos. They added his name onto the tattoos, which I thought was a cool detail.
They looked great too, right?
He has a bunch of real tattoos, right? So yeah, you have to look good to put a fake tattoo right next to a real tattoo.
Well, they covered up a lot of his real tattoo and went over it, but it looked like his actual tattoo. Like all the tattoos looked like his.
His name was like across his stomach. So I think that goes into it as well. And this
absolutely. And then of course all the shots on the boat and stuff. I mean, it's the water. It looks so good anyways, you know, like, and that they chose to do that. So that goes into that. All right. What about the rewatchability? This is if we were to be doing nothing and someone asked you 5 times, how many out of those times would you say yes to watching Roadhouse?
I'm probably only going to give it a 2 here.
A 2? Okay. Not too far off from me. I gave it a 3, mainly because I know that this is just, it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
You know, and like I could have a good time with this movie a few more times, you know what I'm saying?
But normally, like nowadays, if I could watch something that's like just fun, I'd rather err towards watching something I haven't seen and gamble on something. Maybe I'll find something just fun, or maybe I'll find something that I really love.
Yeah, interesting point. Okay, so what does this total out for you?
Mine comes out to a 64, which is like barely above the average between the different sites.
6.4 out of 10. Let's see what mine is here. I didn't add it up yet.
My 6.4 is compared to IMDb's 6.2, and then there's like a 59 and 58% from Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. So
I'm at a 7.1, a little bit higher. I think I was like a half point above you on most of the ones that were close, and then like a point or so above in the last 2. So yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a good movie. Again, we haven't seen the original for Andrew in a very long time. Me, I've never seen it.
Came out like 1989, so like 11 years before the earliest movie Aaron's ever seen.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of people may be hating on this movie because they're directly comparing it to the old one.
Or hating on it because it's like a Prime Video release, and people hate on streaming movies.
That's true.
Which is not always undue hate. Sometimes they pump out some bad movies.
But that's the interesting thing about this movie is Doug Liman didn't want this movie to go to streaming. It was supposed to get a theater release.
He was boycotting it at one point. I believe.
What happened was the studio that greenlit the movie got bought out by Amazon. And then Amazon's like, hey, we're going to be, I think they have $1 billion budgeted to put movies into theaters. So he's fighting for that. And what they said back to him was like, hey, make a good movie and we'll see what happens. So in his opinion, he thought he made a great movie. And Amazon was like, hey, we're going to still put it on streaming. That's our plan.
What a cruel way to phrase it. Is like, make a good movie and maybe it'll go to theaters, and then like it's not going to go to theaters. It's like, what are you saying?
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I don't think it's in my eyes, I don't think Prime Video thinks he made a bad movie. I think they were going to make their decision regardless for other reasons, probably, because the movie is plenty deserving of a theater release based on the cast, based on the quality of the movie after watching it, the production value. I think it's absolutely deserves to go into theaters along with a lot of these other movies that have come out in theaters. I think it would outperform some other movies that have come into theaters this year. Just a cool action flick. I don't feel like the budget would have been insane for this movie. You could probably recoup the budget with like 100 to 200 million.
Yeah, exactly. So
and then just put it on Prime and get the same effect.
Right. Yeah. So he was definitely Doug Liman was definitely upset, and he, like you said, started boycotting the film, and he wasn't going to go to the premiere of the film at a film festival. And over time, he decided that, like, you know what, so many people put in a lot of hard work into this, and I appreciate everyone's work that they did do for this film. So I'm going to go to the screening with them to, like, show my support and thanks.
He probably
I want to see this film with them and stuff like that.
His beef is with the studio. He probably won't make another movie with Prime.
Probably not.
This one wasn't even intentional, I guess.
Yeah, if you want to watch a cool behind the scenes video with Doug Liman, Casey Neistat, who's very famous vlogger, he did a video with him, kind of like a vlog style video, because he knows Doug Liman. So they went and talked about it kind of in a very like comfortable setting, of just him asking him questions about his film and him answering them in a very genuine way. And then they went to the premiere together. And so it's a cool little vlog about kind of all that scenario and stuff. And it's cool to see his passion about the movie, and like how much work really goes into making a movie.
Yeah, I think Doug Liman is more influential in the action genre than a lot of people realize. I mean, in the Firstborn Identity, I shouldn't say that. The Firstborn movie, The Bourne Identity, changed the action landscape.
Yeah.
And making movies like Mr. and Mrs. Smith is obviously iconic. Even The Edge of Tomorrow is like a more recent,
I love that
turn on action sci-fi. So I think maybe not. He's not as much of a household name as other directors, but like
He's still big.
these movies,
Big time actor for sure.
He's made huge movies.
Yeah.
Huge.
Absolutely. Like you said, The Bourne Identity, that was like John Wick is now, like they paved a new way to shoot action.
But the thing is, like, if Chris Nolan or Martin Scorsese was saying, like, put my film in theaters, Prime would be like, okay, I'll put the movie in theaters. Like,
well, they didn't with Tenet, right?
That was a huge issue. They would never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
They did a simultaneous release, I think, didn't they, or something like that? It was either that or it went straight to HBO Max at the time. But that was a disaster, and I don't think that would happen again because they lost Christopher Nolan. He made like 8 movies in a row with Warner Brothers, and then they lost him.
Oppenheimer was with someone else, right?
He went to Universal.
Yeah.
So then he made almost $1 billion, like $980 million.
And they're like, no, please come back.
Yeah,
we're so sorry.
I don't think studios will make that mistake again.
Yeah, so let us know down in the comments below what you guys thought of Roadhouse. How did it compare to the original? Were you comparing it directly to the original? What did you think of the acting performances of Jake Gyllenhaal, the man, and then Conor McGregor's first time on the big screen acting? Let us know in the comments what you think. We post new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any of our content that we put out. Where else are we, Andrew?
We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. Make sure to rate and review the show on there because it helps it get seen by more people. And please make sure to share us with friends and family. It's the best way to grow the show. Tell them about our Discord where you guys can all join in and we can talk about movies and shows, our mutual love for both. And you can suggest episode topics, which we have usually a pretty quick turnaround. If you give us a suggestion, we'll cover it pretty quick.
Yeah, the Discord is free to join. Links in the description of this video and all of our other videos as well. So if you want to join in, there's no fee, which is pretty cool.
But we really appreciate anybody who watches, especially to the very end of the episode. So we wanted to say thank you. And
that's a wrap.